Think about what you did.
Nobody makes it to the end of these things. Come on.
The Broken Agenda Podcast. Sponsored by Laughing Rock Technology.
Single time I hear him talk,
He seems to blast the right.
and he seems to get
The moderate right.
He does. He blasts the moderate left. Like was he always that extreme?
I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen him.
I didn't realize
watched
he was
anything with
like,
him.
he seems more like a liberal.
He's a super liberal.
Yeah.
But what was the show he was on?
The Man Show?
Was he the Man Show?
He was on the Man Show.
I didn't know, man.
He was on the, wasn't he? Wasn't it him and Adam Carolla?
Yeah, it was him and Adam Carolla.
And then Doug Stanhope and Joe Rogan were the second host to it.
See, I always think of Adam Carolla and Joe Rogan, and I know they never hosted it together.
No.
But in my mind, those are the two that ran the Man Show.
Yeah.
So the Man Show is the dumbest thing ever. But at least I never thought it would produce Jimmy Kimmel. I don't know. That guy disgusts me. He's just kind of a wiener too. And is he cross-eyed or not? Like, what is going on with his face? Like, is he? I feel like he's never looking at me. Like I don't know. Is that me?
I never really was bothered by Jimmy Kimmel.
No. What was he saying? What were you listening to?
It was something he was blasting the Texas people about the gun control stuff.
What about the gun control stuff?
What did they? Was it? Well, just because they said, I mean, what he said was funny. Because they said, "Oh, it's not a gun problem; it's a door problem." They should have had all the other doors locked, and armed guards at the front. So basically, it should be a prison. So it was kind of funny.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Actually, it was interest. I mean, he made sense with what his backlash was. Yeah.
Gotcha. In the sense that locking down the school turns into a prison, you mean?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, my kids' school doors are all locked. You have access through one point. I don't necessarily think it's a prison. Kids can get out.
Yeah,
but people can't get in.
Yeah, my school's the same way. You get buzzed in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know the high schools and the junior highs all have armed police. The elementary schools do not.
I can't remember. I can't remember if they still have school resource officers.
Well,
I think they do.
I guess that's why the gunner went to the elementary school.
Yeah. He chose wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that school district had their own police force. Like, not just school resource officers, like their own police force.
Yeah, but usually when they have those, they're not thinking about active shooters are so rare. Like, I think that's the thing that we don't think about is the rarity of an active shooter at a school is like, I think what is the stat? You'd have to get struck by lightning like 7 times or something like that.
Yeah, any mass shooting in general is extremely rare.
Yeah.
Well, typical mass shootings, not necessarily how they classify mass shootings.
Well, that's a totally different thing we'll talk about today.
But I think I had seen that police department had just trained for a active shooter at a school a week before. Like literally the week before.
Did they really?
Something like that, yeah. And they did nothing that they were trained to do.
I have not followed this story that much, so you guys are going to have to enlighten me. I mean, obviously I know the broad strokes. So what we're talking about, if anybody's not sure, or if you're watching this a year from now, as we're talking about the Texas shoot. How do you pronounce the Ovida? Uvalde?
Something like that, yeah.
Is that what it is? The shooting there where I believe it was 19 kids were killed and 2 teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, which is obviously, I mean, no matter when you're watching this, that's a tragedy. That's going to be awful. And of course, we're all in the big discussion now about how do we fix it, which I always think that's a little silly. It's never a good decision to make decisions
emotionally
when emotions are amped up. Like that's never a good time to make these types of calls. Like you want to sit down, you want to look at stats, you want to analyze and figure out what's going to work. You don't just want to be like, I don't know, kill all the 18-year-olds or whatever it is that you decide in that moment because you're upset. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
It's probably it's probably a bad time to make decisions.
So, so let's talk about this, the three of us. So they're talking about it in Congress, but those people are morons. We're obviously geniuses. So, like, what is there a solution? Like, what do you do?
I don't know. Yeah, I've asked myself this question. Is there really something you can do?
It's a catch-22, man. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. It seems stupid. It seems dumb to say that oh no, we don't. There's a school shooting. We need more guns. The teachers should have guns. There should be armed guards. It seems silly to say that. But at the same time, I think we all know in our hearts that they want to take the guns because they want,
Well, the funny thing about
they
that,
want to take the guns because they want to control. They just, I don't know. There's a sad story, I think, at the day when there's no more guns.
well, that's I don't think that's going to happen. anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how many people say it will never happen here, it'll never happen here. There's plenty of real world examples where firearms were taken away, and then I mean, look at Australia. We haven't had a mass shooting, but our government put us in concentration
Well, not
camps.
only that, but their violent crime rate is up. Has been since it went down temporarily after they took away the guns, and it's been up ever since. I think it went down for 1 year, and then it's been up. Violent crime has been up every year since they took away guns. So, and we've seen that in almost every single case where guns are taken away. Actually, when it comes to gun-free zones like schools, something like, what is it? It's almost 100% of all mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. So creating a zone where you're telling people there definitely won't be armed opposition is creating what inherently a soft target.
It is. I mean, it is. Yeah.
You're literally telling people that want to do bad, here's a place where you can do bad and nobody will stop you.
Nobody's walking into a police department and trying to shoot them all up.
Or if they do, they're not making it long.
They don't make it very far.
So, and we hear stories all the time of open carry churches and stuff where people come in to shoot the place up and they get gunned down before they get a word out.
Yeah.
Because everybody's carrying. I don't know. I personally don't understand why, if you've got a trained, certified teacher who's, I mean, I carry. I know you carry. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be a shooter in the school if every teacher was.
Well, I don't think every
carrying.
teacher. Like, there's gonna be teachers that aren't gonna want to. There's gonna be teachers that aren't comfortable.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, there are teachers in these schools that are like, oh yeah, well, I leave school and I go to the range and I shoot, or I go and I shoot shotgun, I go and shoot clays, or I go and I hunt. Like, this is a very common thing. Like, there's a reason why so many people are pro-gun. It's not because we're crazy gun people. It's because they're tools. I mean, I'm also pro-hammer.
Yeah.
Really like my hammer. Like a big ball peen hammer. It's awesome. I'm very pro hammer. I love that hammer.
I think that's what you have to think about. Once guns are gone, would you rather be killed by a hammer or a gun?
I don't want to be killed by anything. I'm
would you rather have your
I'm
skull smashed in with a hammer?
I mean, it does sound delightful. It sounds fine. It's fine. No, I do not want to have my skull smashed with a hammer.
We really went right into this. We should.
I didn't think we were going to jump right in. I thought we'd tiptoe around the edges here for a while, but sorry, I dragged us in. I don't know. I honestly don't have a problem with arming teachers. I think school budgets are tight enough as it is, and we spend money like we're printing it because we are. I don't think we need to hire people to work at every single school in America just to do security.
But isn't that pretty standard across schools now, having some sort of school resource officer?
Most schools partner with their local law enforcement.
Right, yeah. You usually partner with your local law enforcement and they assign an officer.
They'll assign an officer that's going to be there during the day, and they're going to rove between the schools, or maybe a couple depending on the size of your district. But again, still, that's all taxpayer dollars. And so, you're hiring a ton more people if you need to make sure you have an armed presence paid for at every single school. I mean, I know my school district alone, there's 5 elementary buildings, 2 middle schools, and a high school. So you've got 8 full-time employees, and to be there every single day just to provide armed security, assuming that you just have one per school.
Yeah.
So, and the high school's pretty big. You might need multiple. I don't know. Whereas I think you sidestep that whole issue by just having what essentially comes down to what were the air marshals. Teachers that are concealed carried.
Yep.
That are certified by the school. They go through a training course. And I mean, there's another thing. I don't understand why we don't have first-time gun owners have to have training courses. Like, my wife's going through it right now. She's going through a training course because she never owned her own gun before. I got her a pistol for Christmas. Merry Christmas. That's how you know the romance is gone. It used to be jewelry and all sorts of other stuff. Now it's like, here's a way for you to put me out of my misery.
It would be because you're creating a de facto registry.
Okay, I could see that.
So you're essentially saying you don't get this gun until you completed this. Now we have record that you completed this. So that tells us you have a gun. Technically those records exist, but the government does not have access to them until we can talk about the ATF too. But There's not, by the constitutional law, there's not allowed to be a registry of firearm owners.
That's in the Constitution?
I think it's part of it's been ruled on that they cannot have an active registry of who owns a firearm. Definitely in Pennsylvania. I know for 100% fact in Pennsylvania there can be no registry.
Really? I didn't know that. Is that a state law then, or is that like it went through the Supreme Court?
I think that's in our federal, or I'm sorry, no, our state constitution. That
All
there
right,
can be.
we got to look that up.
Yeah.
Actually, can you look that up on
Yeah.
camera?
Yep.
Awesome.
We can do the intro to the show while he's looking that up.
We're already 11 minutes in. There ain't no intro to the show. We just roll right in, buddy. All right, so that's a good point. But you could still do training without a registry. You just work through third parties.
Right, and you see a large that is very common now with a lot of gun shops. I mean, even the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, if you go in for a CCW or for CCW permit, they offer classes right there at the sheriff's office. The sheriffs run it and stuff, and you can take those classes. You don't have to.
And what's a CCW?
Concealed carry weapon permit.
That.
So, Pennsylvania is an LTCF, license to carry a firearm.
So I didn't know if everybody knew it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Oh wait, hold on. Did you find it?
Yeah,
Title
this
18.
is in
So what is this?
Pennsylvania. Section chapter, the contrary, nothing this chapter shall be construed to allow any government or law enforcement agency or agent thereof to create, maintain, or operate any registry of firearm ownership within this Commonwealth.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so
that's a 1995 amendment to our state constitution. So, wow. Okay, I did not know that existed.
Yeah, I know Texas gets all the credit for their firearms laws, but Pennsylvania is one of the strongest in terms of constitutionally protected firearms rights.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people that own firearms, and we don't see any type of gun violence around here, but we're very gun friendly. Like it's not weird to have a gun in where I live. Like everybody's got them. People talk about them. There's no stigma with them. It's not like it's a thing. Kids see them. You know, a lot of time I shoot with my daughter who's 9. I mean, I think a lot of this comes down to the forbidden fruit factor. When you got these 18-year-olds that it always seems to be young people that are coming out and, you know, attracted to this type of violence. But, you know, we've turned this into basically a fear factor. You know, we've turned guns into some sort of boogeyman. And now, you know, you've got people that are always going to be attracted to these things that people are afraid of.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is a monster that we've created because we've turned guns into something that they're not. We've turned them into something more than a tool. Now there's some sort of dangerous thing that will destroy all humanity if you ever come near one. Run away. Cover your eyes if you see somebody carrying. Run, little girl. It's like, no, it's, you know, police officers carry. I love how we shun people who carry guns, but we celebrate people that come to help you who also carry guns. Like we have these double standards all over the place. So the only real difference between a police officer carrying a gun and a civilian is the type of training they went through. And maybe not even. I mean, the type of training I took is the same
That's
thing
a pretty big difference.
that the police department take.
I mean,
That's a pretty significant difference.
what's that? Police? So
that they're trained.
So police are trained in the academy. There are a lot of police forces that do not require them to continue their training. They don't even have to go to the range and shoot their gun. You'll find civilians who train more than a lot of police officers.
Yes.
Just go to any open public range, you'll see the same people there. I mean, there are a lot of obviously officers who train with their weapons, but there are also a lot of departments that do not require any kind of qualification or anything of that nature.
The other thing is the type of training they go through is not very different from the type of training you would go through if you were to take the NRA training course at your local gun shop. It's really not that different.
No.
And there's some differences, but it's basically the same concepts. So, and that's what I always recommend. Just take the NRA course.
This is an interesting situation here because, like, on one hand, I understand why the people resist a registry, but on the other hand, I see the complication of not having one.
Why? What's the complication?
Well,
what would it have helped? I guess is the real question. How would a registry?
So what do you know about? So I don't know. What was this situation with this previous shooter at
This
the
last
school?
one?
The school
Was
one?
he a registered firearm?
He turned 18. He went and bought 2 guns, shot his grandmother, and then shot a school up. That's
Yeah.
But
it was within.
so
a week.
he
bought them
basically just bought them.
He bought them legally.
Now he was the
Legally, that-
first one. He was the first mass shooting that I could think of that actually
his-
went out and bought them
Bought his
legally.
own guns. Yeah.
So of all the mass shootings we've had since Columbine, he was the only one that went out and bought his firearms. Everybody else either stole them from a parent or someone else, or
The only one I can't remember is the Virginia Tech guy.
I don't know about
But
that.
I feel like there was something fishy with the way he obtained his firearms.
Something. I do know the guy out in Vegas owned all of his firearms.
Yeah.
Those were his, but he breaks all the rules. Like he doesn't he's not young. He didn't. There's no reason. That we already talked about him. So, but yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's not.
I guess it
not
doesn't do
buying
any
it.
good if you had a registry. What does that matter? What does it matter if they knew he was a gun owner?
It wouldn't
It
have
doesn't matter until he does the wrong thing with it.
It wouldn't have mattered. And they talk about red flag laws. That wouldn't have mattered. Universal background checks would not have mattered in any of these because at no point was it somebody giving somebody else a gun. In fact, the kid in Texas, he asked his sister to buy a gun and give it to him, and she said no. She was like, no. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway because even if you make transfers, universal transfers, a requirement, it doesn't mean she can't buy a gun and give it to him. It just means that now she's on the hook after he shoots somebody up because she didn't register the transfer of the firearm. So it doesn't really change a whole lot. None of these things are solved by these laws. So and the red flag laws, there's no evidence they help either.
Actually,
red flag.
So a red flag law is like if you're saying things, Jimmy, that I don't like or I think you could harm yourself, I can
or others.
I can tell the police and they can come confiscate your weapons until you've proven you can't be. But the ability to prove yourself innocent is much harder.
Yeah, essentially, you never get your guns back. So it's the epitome of guilty until proven innocent.
And then you can really exploit that because you can take people's guns for any reason.
Yeah,
Just if I don't like you.
Yeah.
Yep, you can just say my neighbor makes me nervous, and they've said some things that make me uncomfortable, and then the police now have justification to come into your home and take your property. So I have a real problem with red flag laws, and my ultimate problem with red flag laws is in almost every single one of these shooting situations, all of these people were on watch lists. We were aware there were indications that the police had been notified that there was something, and instead of getting involved. They're all missed opportunities.
This kid that just did the Texas shooting was?
Yes.
What was he on the watch list for?
He wasn't on a watch list. He had been reported for making threats. And he actually said...
Oh, that's right. I did hear that.
Social media stuff.
Yeah, he said he was going to shoot up a school, didn't he?
He said something like, kids better watch out.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
And
something of that nature.
Somebody reported him. And
He took a picture of the gun and said, kids better watch out. That's how it was. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
yeah. So
Man, he's a hero running into an elementary school. And
well, I mean, that's the thing.
What is-
Like, what is the mentality?
kids better watch out. Little kids. Like,
Well, I mean, there's your problem, right? Like, we don't even have a framework for what's driving this stuff.
To me, and this is armchair psychiatry, but it just sounds like he had some sort of trauma that happened in his youth. And
Yep.
he blames other kids and blames everybody who's young or something of
how
that
could you
nature.
go that young? Like, what happened at that age that
That's
was
what
that? Like,
To try to put ourselves in the mind of, like, I own firearms. I get upset, but I've never once thought I should get a gun and go shoot a bunch of people.
Like
that
elementary
never
kids.
crosses my mind in my
I
entire
can
life.
It's never even occurred
understand.
to me to get my gun for any reason like that.
Exactly.
It's never even crossed my mind.
Exactly.
I can understand high school shooting. You know what I mean? Not that I understand
But you're
it,
bullied.
but I
and
can
you're taking
I can understand
You really
that.
see the emotion.
This one is like kind of flabbergasting.
Yeah, I don't understand how.
This is just like crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem we're in right now. We want to stop this, but we don't have any solutions. So we're going to grab on anything we think might make sense. And the phrase I keep hearing that bothers me the most is when they talk about red flag laws and they talk about universal background checks and they talk about universal registries and all this other stuff. Whenever somebody in government is asked, will this solve our problems? They always say the same thing. This will be a great framework to start with. They're very open about the fact that this is not what they want, But if we get this, then we can start working towards the next thing, and then the next thing. And the ultimate goal is no guns. Look at New York. I mean, New York ended up getting to a point where the only way you could buy a gun, the only way you could get a license to carry a firearm is if you could show cause. And you can't show cause. It's not possible. I mean, Glenn Beck was actually was having death threats, and his life was being threatened on a regular basis. He had armed security with him at all times, and they denied him and said you can't show an unusual need. I don't remember what the exact words are in the New York law. I think it just got struck down, didn't it?
The New York law that was supposed to go to the Supreme Court.
It just got struck down.
So that law was specific to New York wasn't allowing anybody. How did it work? You had to have a concealed carry permit in order to go to the range with your firearm. You could buy a firearm, but you had to have a concealed carry permit, which was impossible to get in New York City.
Right.
I think that's how it worked. There was something else with it too. Like they essentially said anybody who leaves their house with a gun is now a felon. Type deal. That got to the Supreme Court. They got rid of it because the Supreme Court was gonna hear the case.
Well, they did just lose one. They just lost one. Oh no, they didn't lose it yet. I think they're waiting for the ruling to come out, but they know they're going to lose. They just don't know how they're going to lose.
Mm-hmm. I think when politicians try to pass blatantly unlawful like laws like that, I think they should come up on charges. Like that to me was a scandalous like attempt to pass a law, and that should be like scrutinized.
Well, that's the norm anymore.
You can't you can't that's just really wrong to do that.
Well, you're skirting the Second Amendment. You're saying you can still own a gun. You just can't buy it and transport it back to your house because as soon as you leave the building, you're now a felon.
Yeah.
And if you do manage to get it back to your house, if you ever take it out of your house, you're a felon. But we're not saying you can't own a gun. You just can't ever look at it or touch it or pick it up.
See, that's a criminal passing a law.
Well, and not only that, but that makes gun violence more dangerous. So the one time that person's ever going to use their gun is going to be in a heated situation with adrenaline pumping when somebody's in their house, and they're more inclined to hurt themselves or others because they have no training. So now you're still allowing them to own guns, but you're not allowing them to train. You're not allowing them to take courses. You're not allowing them to go to the range and hone their skills. You're not allowing them to get responsible and comfortable with the firearm. You're making them basically more dangerous instead of less. So at that point, you're exacerbating the situation. I mean, that's my take on it. I don't know. But I guarantee you, when I first started shooting, if somebody had broken into my house that weekend, there was no way that was going well for me. Because there's no way with adrenaline pumping through my veins and with my limited knowledge of my brand new firearm that I was going to do all of the steps correctly to protect myself and my family. It was never going to happen. So now thousands of rounds through my sidearm and tons of time at the range and training and everything else, like there's muscle memory involved. I know exactly how all the safeties work. I know exactly how to make sure my gun's loaded, make sure how to deal with a jam, how to make sure that,
Well, most self-defense situations, it's not going to be a crowd of people around. It's sort of an isolated incident. So I don't know. I don't see how denying people training necessarily makes it like.
Well, there is a crowd around your family.
I believe that people, should have first of all, the whole law was just screwy. So what they did was wrong. I mean, they shouldn't prevent people from training, and they shouldn't. Just the whole outline of the attempt to pass that law was really like a crime in itself.
Well, how long that law was in effect for? Like a decade, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a while before the gun rights group in New York challenged it. Finally.
And it was upstate New York. There's a couple people.
And so the judge and everybody who signed that bill should be brought up on charges.
Who's going to charge them?
Because, I guess.
Why
didn't they should be able to?
We can't even get Epstein's.
Why can't you charge them? If they're criminals
posing, going to charge them over that law?
They're criminals posing as politicians. How could you not bring them up on charges?
Hey, do you remember that one time I did a favor for you? Do one for me now.
Yeah.
If I go down, you're all going down with me. So why don't we just bury this thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
I mean, they're crooked.
They're crooked as crap. New York's awful. It's my brother works in insurance, and he does subrogation, so he fights with lawyers. So it's a national insurance company. I can't say the name, obviously. And they work in every state in the country. And there's 2 states where they have dedicated teams. Guess which 2 states?
New York, California.
New York and California. It is so screwed up in New York and California that not only is it like working in a different country where you have to learn totally different laws, but it takes an entire team of people to do what it takes one or two people to do in every other state, because it is so complicated, ridiculous, convoluted, and messed up. They actually pay these people more. That's how horrible it is to deal with California and New York. They will pay you more because people refuse to do the job. Like, I don't understand how we still have.
Well, their populations are much more dense, right? I mean, they have a higher population. And
I mean, upstate New York is empty. You've got New York City, but the rest of New York, I mean, around the lakes, you've got a pretty dense population.
Well, I don't think
New
that
York
they're not writing their laws because of the areas around the lakes. They're writing their laws based
New York
on
City. New York City drives, New York. Well, I mean, if you look at California, there is a huge conservative base in California. They definitely don't live within 3 miles of the beach, though.
There's a big push in California to separate into two
the north.
states. Yeah,
Make Northern California a different state.
the north is just like, I don't know, central Pennsylvania.
Yeah. It's a lot of farmers and people living up in the woods, and they just want freedom, and they're sick of being tethered to L.A.
Yep.
and San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I mean, those two cities are brutal. What I don't understand is, how is Oregon so bad? Like, what happened to those people?
You see, and it's just California runoff, right? You see, Denver is the one I always like to use as an example. Colorado is an extremely free state, Midwest state. Ex-Californians are like, we gotta get out of California because it sucks. And they go there and they start, we like this thing, and then slowly things start going
becomes
back to California. So like Denver is very California-ish, and they actually put a lot of gun bans in place, like magazine limitations and stuff, within the last 5-10 years. But before, it was just, Magpul was from Colorado, and then they did this ban, and Magpul said, we're out. Pulled their whole industry out.
Don't California my state?
That's what it is. It's the same thing with New York, right? We have people jumping out of New York, coming down to the Poconos and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. My in-laws live in the Poconos, and they're losing their minds right now. Mm-hmm. They're just ruining everything.
These people aren't realizing that they're part of the reason why things are so bad.
They are the reason.
They are,
so
yeah.
bad. You're bringing your problems with you while you're trying to get away from those very same problems.
Yeah.
But they refuse to admit they're wrong, so they hide behind the idea of cheap real estate.
Yep.
Like, no, we don't. New York is still great. We just, we just want to find a more affordable place for our family. Mm-hmm. You're like, why? Because that $12,000 a month 1-bedroom apartment isn't working for you for 5 people. You're like, you created this situation, and now you're running away and doing it all over again. It's like a virus. It multiplies.
Well, I guess it's that's the middle of the road, right? Like, there's good things about being there that when they come out, it's like, it's kind of that meeting in the middle. They bring a little bit more, a wider range of thinking to a closed-minded group. And, I don't know. Sometimes I think that
I would disagree. With the internet, we all have access to pretty much all the same ideas. I would say they bring their own narrow thinking into an area that doesn't necessarily want it, and they impose their will. It is more like totalitarianism. So we already know what these ideas and what these concepts do to the large cities. I mean, we've all seen.
Let's talk about what these people are actually bringing to the Poconos. Like, what is it that they're wrecking the cities with? What ideology?
I am not qualified to have this conversation. I hear my father-in-law bitch and moan. I gotta be honest, I don't listen that much. He just goes off and off and off about it. I know.
I mean, the people that are moving out and running are,
I mean, the first thing you always hear in these areas where you have these big influxes is prices go through the roof. That's the first thing you hear, because you've got different socioeconomic statuses. So the Poconos, the average median income per family might be per year might be $50,000 a year, and you might live pretty well on $50,000 a year. It is just not that expensive to live there. But when you start getting this mass exodus from New York, a house that was maybe $120,000, they're willing to pay $400,000 for it, because compared to New York pricing, they'd pay that just for the land. So the first thing they always see is when they see these mass influxes of people from larger cities is prices skyrocket, but the incomes don't change. So you don't see that catch up. So everything goes through the roof, the income doesn't follow, and then you end up with basically a serf class. So you have all the people that were originally there that do not live. They're not living off the incomes that the New York people are still working in New York, but living in let's say the Poconos. So they're maybe making $250,000 a year, and you're making $50,000 a year, and now you have clashing socioeconomic, and somebody that's making $250,000 a year doesn't like that your $50,000 a year house across the street looks the way it looks, and now they start passing ordinances that affect your life, but you don't make enough money to start doing the landscaping and putting in all of the roadways and the sidewalks and putting in all of the things that the ordinances now require so that your neighborhood looks the way these new people want your neighborhood to look because they want it to look a certain way. And you end up getting driven out of your neighborhood and out of your home.
Okay, so that's not really an ideology. That's more or less just...
Well, the ideology comes in where they start to create, they want it to look the way they want it to look. They start bringing their opinions of what things should be to your community.
Well, I mean, it's anybody's gonna, if you move to a neighborhood and then people start moving in that degrade the community, that makes the person who takes care of their place upset. This is just happening the opposite way around.
It is, and it's called gentrification. And it's not a bad thing, but we talk about gentrification as if it's bad in the city. This is where I'm talking about. So they rail on gentrification in the city, how it destroys historical sites and how it disimpoverishes people and it ruins communities that have been there forever. But then when we do it out in the rural area, we got to get these rubes out of these neighborhoods. They're ruining everything. They're destroying this community, and they're just disgusting and they're gross. Literally the exact same thing that they fight against in the city, they do intentionally in the rural areas and tell everybody to shut up. And this is what I'm saying, this conflict of ideology, this conflict of thought, where they know it's the exact same concept and they know they're doing the exact same thing, but in one place it hurts them and in the other place it helps them. So it's all about them. So you have rural gentrification, and it's okay. Urban gentrification, bad.
Are we talking about, did we jump ship there? Are we talking about gender stuff now? Or are you just talking about your house?
Do you not know what gentrification is?
What's gentrification?
I might have I did jump ships there. Gentrification is when you basically drive up the value of an area.
Okay.
So a lot of people complain. So greatest example of gentrification ever was probably Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Became a hipster real estate trend. Everybody was going to Brooklyn, right? Brooklyn, we're going to Brooklyn. And Brooklyn was not great. But there was a lot of old poverty in Brooklyn. A lot of it. Italian Americans that have lived there for generations, a lot of Polish Americans that have lived there for generations that came over in the great migrations of the early 1900s. Their families have been established there for generations, and they worked in Manhattan or they worked on Long Island and they lived in Brooklyn. And then all these big money people from Manhattan started saying, I don't want to spend money on the same old apartments in Manhattan that cost way too much. I'm going to build all new buildings in Brooklyn, and we're just going to take over and drive these people out of their homes. And that's what gentrification is. Now these people can't afford to be in their homes anymore.
Now those people are moving down here doing the same thing.
So the values start going up, the taxes start going up. People can't afford to keep their homes and they get pushed out. And you create an entire generation of people that are forced out of their homes because of all of this money pouring into their community. And that's the same thing that these people from New York are doing to rural areas. Whether it be in Nevada, whether it be in... Am I screwing this up? Or is that
no, you're right. Yep, you're absolutely right.
Doesn't matter where it is. We're using the Poconos as an example, but it happens all over. My wife told somebody in Alabama that we'd love to move down there because we love certain areas of Alabama, and they got real serious. And you know, my wife goes, "Are you guys okay?" And they're like, "Don't you Yankee our Alabama?" Like they are terrified of New York coming to Alabama because they know what they're going to do. And then once they start passing the ordinances, they're going to start getting into the local offices, and then they're going to start passing education reforms and start doing all the stuff that we see that now we're fighting against. So a lot of these areas are trying to stop it because they don't want to end up where everybody else is already at. They want to stop it before we get there.
It's just a morphine of humanity. It's just almost like it's just what happens.
Well, it's class warfare. It's not what just happens. No. It's class warfare. And you've got very different classes that are forcing themselves together. And it's creating strife. It's creating struggle. And it's going to happen. And I'm not saying it's
well, because places get overpopulated, and then it's almost like it's just...
Well, the problem is there's no time. It happens too fast. These things are fine if it's done in a controlled manner. There's a reason why we don't just have open borders. There's a reason why we control immigration is because you have to be able to acclimate. If you're moving into a city, you need to be able to acclimate to the culture of that city. If you're moving into a rural area, you need to be able to acclimate to the culture of that rural area. And that takes time. You can't do it in a year or two. It takes generally at least a generation. You need to raise your children in that area and learn the culture and become a part of it. Doesn't matter which direction you're going in, whether you're moving from a low affluent to a high affluent or the other way. But right now we're seeing mass exoduses in all directions with no time for there to be acclimation. So there's just ingrained natural division, which leads to strife, which is not a good scenario no matter what you're doing.
That's a difficult situation because it's not really necessarily anybody doing anything wrong. It's just, I mean, it's not like it's.
There's not evil intent behind it.
No,
it's not.
That's what makes it not the best thing.
No, and then what do you do? So then it's not. Is it really fair to tell somebody then? Well, you can't move here because you have too much money.
No, you can't.
And you're
tell
messing up our
they can't
real
move
estate
anywhere.
prices.
That's not what they're saying.
The people that have lived there are benefiting. I realize they're losing their community, but they're benefiting because of the increase in real estate values. So now you have, where they could have lived their entire life. Maybe their house might have doubled in price. Now their house is going up 4 to 5 times in price. So, I mean, they are gaining some kind of benefit from it. I realize that they're losing their hometown and things are changing.
Jimmy, I will say, if that was the case, then why is nobody ever happy when it happens?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what's happening, right? You're telling me the real estate
almost
prices
every
are going
single
up?
scenario, there's a reason there's words made up for this. It's because you're causing people to lose their homes. So most times what's happening is they start driving up taxes. And you don't lose your home because you gained so much money in the value of your house. You lose your home because you can't afford your taxes anymore. So,
well, but if you're losing your home because your taxes go up, your home's probably went up substantially in value.
Maybe.
I can't believe that the two of those don't go hand in hand.
I mean, Jimmy, you can say that all you want, but time and time again, people are fighting against this. If that was the case, I mean, you would have to think there would be happy stories coming out of this, but there's not. So if you own a $100,000 house and it goes up to $200,000, you made a $100,000 profit. Where are you going to go? Where do you go? That was your home. You had it paid off. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to an area that's more affluent? Well, you still can't afford a home there with $200,000. So are you going to be in your 60s and get another mortgage to buy another house? Are you going to start renting? Are you going to try to go further into a rural area and find someplace else that's less expensive and start over in a new town where you don't know anybody that doesn't have a big economy? You had your house paid off, but your taxes keep going up. That was your retirement plan.
Well, so
it's
the
not
argument
just
is taxes shouldn't go up. I mean,
no, but the reason taxes go up is so you get people come in, right? And there's an expectation of standard of living. So now they want to build new schools. They want to build new resources. They want things to be like it was where they were. So, and so they start running for local office because they want to make change. And then that's what always happens. And they get into local office and they start saying, well, I don't want to live in a town with one of these old schools. We need a new school. This town doesn't have a new school. And there's no reason we can't spend $100 million to up our facilities. Now if you go down south, your school tax bill for like a $300,000 house is like $1,200. So you go up to North Jersey or you go into Connecticut, for a $300,000 house, if you can find one, your tax bill is like $15,000. So these are very different things, and you need to have you need to have the economic diversity within the community to support that type of tax change, or else people don't have. If you're making $50,000 a year, going from $1,500 a year in taxes to $12,000 a year in taxes, that's food. Mm-hmm. You can't afford that. So as you start spending money like you're all making $250,000 a year and ignoring that the community moved into is filled with people that don't make even a third of that, you start exacerbating the issue. So this is where this always comes from, this divide. And then it continues and it continues and it continues. And obviously the people with the money are going to win. So you end up with the working class and the poverty class getting worse, as gentrification causes them to, and the longer they hold out, the worse their situation is, because then they end up in a lien situation where they're behind on taxes. They end up now they're in court battles, with no money to fight them. Like it's not a good scenario. Like I know you want to put a positive spin on it, but it rarely ends well, except for the people that see the writing on the wall early and have a plan. But people that plan on dying in their house, those are the ones that get hosed because they get left behind. And it's not. I'm a big progress guy. I'm not saying it's all bad. What I'm saying is it doesn't usually end well for the people that were originally there. And it's not all that different. Yeah, I guess it's part of our tradition. Maybe they should offer them some scissors.
Or,
Isn't that what we do to indigenous peoples in rural areas? Before we drive them off their land. Don't take the blankets if you're in the Poconos.
Yes.
Don't take the blankets. Look, we got to take a break. We're way over time.
Yeah, we really jumped ship here.
Yeah,
too.
we lost track. All right, we'll be back. Peace out.
All right,
Were they your only two in the city? Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, they weren't the only two in the city.
So what were you going to say?
Back to guns.
Oh, yeah, guns. So you've been oddly quiet today.
about what?
Guns.
No, I was talking about them. Then you guys started talking about gentrification and real estate.
We got spicy. It's
we really went down the real estate path here.
We did. So it's back to you, Tyler. Sorry, we got off track. This is what happens when you don't have an agenda. We didn't just break it. We just didn't even make it. Just skipped it.
What do you want to talk about with guns?
Well, I don't know. Well, there's so many things because guns is such a hot topic right now. I mean, you can talk mass shootings, you can talk police shootings. I mean, I think this whole topic came up because we were talking about the stat unarmed African American men that were shot
killed.
in America.
Yeah,
averages 10 per year. I think it's 9 to 12 per year. I think in 2018 it was 10. I think in 2017 it was 9, something like that. But the misinterpret. I saw a study that was interviewing. I think it was on like 1,200 people, where they asked them their age, their gender, their political affiliation, and one question besides that: how many unarmed black men they thought got shot per year. And it literally followed the political line. So even conservatives, if you ask conservatives, they were like, I don't know, 100. Like it was still high. But then when you got into the moderates, I mean, they thought it was like 1 to 5,000. And when you got to like liberals, they thought, like some of them thought it was over 25,000. They thought it was like basically the population of a small town was getting mowed down. Like cops were just shooting anybody with chocolate skin out there that they could find, just mowing them down and just covering it up. Like that's what they thought.
It's almost like a Nazi, like a
yes,
constant, like they're just buzzing through.
It was
eliminating.
Schindler's List,
Yeah,
and just happening all over the place in Central Jersey. And then when they would tell them that it was 9, what do you think the response was?
That's fake news.
Yes, they wouldn't believe it. They refused to believe it because their preconceived notion based on no fact was far more valid than the actual crime statistics. So I don't know, how do you have this conversation about guns when nobody will even believe the actual stats?
It's a tough conversation to have, and I've tried, but I think you said it earlier. It's all stemmed in fear of firearms. I mean, I didn't grow up around firearms. We had a .22 in our house, but it never came out of my dad's closet. Like it was just an antique he had bought.
Okay.
For my grandfather, and that was it. Never. I maybe handled a gun 3 times before the age of 18.
Now, did you have BB guns?
I had BB guns, yes. So I guess kind of, but for me, that's not really a firearm.
It's not, but
it's
for
a
kid,
trainer thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's a practicing.
It's a practice thing, but I had never. I mean, not until maybe the couple of times when I'd go out to my grandfather's, I shot a couple 22s, but it was like that was it. But my own curiosity and wondering why people saw these things as so bad, and this is coming from someone who's had a family member commit suicide by gun.
Oh, wow.
Like they were demonized in my house from a very young age. That was like when I was 7 years old. So it was always this kind of my mom is terrified of guns. But I had my own curiosity, so I started going out and figuring out what these things actually were they really as bad as they said? But I explored my own fear and found that they weren't. And now I think guns are cool.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you brought up suicide. So what's the stat? About 30,000 gun deaths in America per year, right?
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Well, no, 33,000 gun deaths.
Yeah.
33,000 gun deaths per year in America. Now, 2/3 of those are suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So that's.
Do we have a stat resource for that?
Go ahead, look it up. I'm going to run through these, and you can check my numbers.
We said about.
So 2/3 of those are suicide. So that brings us down to about 11,000. See if you can keep up with me here. Now, of those 11,000, I believe about 500 of those are accidental discharge deaths. So that takes us down to 10 for accident. You're mishandling the gun. You're cleaning it. You didn't clear the chamber first. Whatever. You just did something stupid. That brings us down to about 10.5. And then of that, There's another 500 that's something wonky that I can't think of right now. Come back to me on that one. I'll come back to it. So, but it's about 10,000 firearm deaths in the United States per year. That doesn't include, and we're the only nation in the world that includes suicides as gun deaths. Nobody else does that. So we've got about 10,000. Which, okay, so now that we've got a number that's usable, what is that 10,000? 90% of that 10,000, 90% is handguns. So only about 1,000 deaths per year from rifles. And that includes assault rifles. That is not a real thing. That's a made-up term, but includes those. And of those 90% that are pistols, almost all of them are gang-related inner-city crimes. Almost all of them. And in Chicago alone, you're not looking at an entire city. People talk about Chicago and how you realize that the gun deaths that happen in Chicago are a 20-block radius. So this is not a city problem. This is one area. It's a cultural problem. This is one area of Chicago where almost all of their gun deaths happen. It's about 20 blocks.
You know, that's like where the mob was at. Like where the mob was concentrated back in the day. So it's like that whole area holds those mobsters as like iconic, like heroes almost.
Well,
so
now
they're like
yeah,
now it's gangs.
It's
well,
just
it is
big
gangs now, but that's like really like that's where the mob was birthed out of almost, right? So it's not even like, it's crazy when you look at that pocket and you look at all the gangs that are located in that area. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And Chicago's kind of crazy. What did you find?
This is from Pew Research, so I was kind of trying to read through it, but
So are they giving us any numbers here?
yeah, this is 2020 numbers. So 54% of all gun-related deaths in the U.S. were suicides at 24,300.
Okay, so they've got some higher numbers.
Yeah, this is just 2020.
Okay.
43% were murders. That's 19,400. And
So
then,
535 were unintended.
yep.
So 20.
Law enforcement was the other 500.
So we have about 20,000 deaths that are
When you take out that 1,000 for unintentional and
20,000 murders by guns. Is that what that's saying?
undetermined circumstances. I don't know what that is, but
I don't,
so
yeah, I
1,500
don't know what that would
comes
be.
out. So you're looking at roughly what, about 18,000
Total deaths?
in 2020
2020?
on these stats.
Just without that, you're looking at 21,000.
No, about 18,000 because you had 19,384 were murders.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
yeah.
you take out the roughly 1,500 for
Yeah.
unintended law enforcement and undetermined.
Yeah.
And you're down to about roughly 18,000, rounding up to 18,000.
Mm-hmm.
So nearly 8 in 10 involved a firearm. Oh, so those are all murders. These are not firearms. These are different stats.
So this is now this part of this section is looking at what murders and suicides included a gun or involved a gun.
Yeah, but this is saying the same number, 19,384. So
Yeah,
this is
because
saying,
that's what this
so this
is.
was all
It's essentially
murders. This is not all gun murders. So there were
Yeah.
54 deaths that were attributed to not natural causes,
Yeah.
basically. Or not 50, whatever the total number was. But 19,384 of those deaths were not suicides. And about 18,000 were not suicides or unintentional or undetermined or law enforcement related.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 18,000 total. All right, so we're probably still on target with the numbers I gave you.
Yeah. Yep.
So they're saying 1 in 8. So of 18,000, that leaves 80% of them were murders. Okay, or no, it included a firearm. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that number doesn't mean a lot to me right now.
no,
Like,
I know.
what-
I'm trying to figure out. Like, man, they feel like they're describing this in a really terrible way.
Yeah.
They're all over
that's-
the map.
But I know we have we have about somewhere around 40,000 deaths at car accidents a year, right? That's
I'm
pretty
not
similar.
sure. That's a good.
It's a pretty similar number. It's somewhere in there.
Is that how many it is?
Mm-hmm.
God, that's a lot.
It's like 30 or 40,000.
So, is this giving us anything we can use, or is this just talking us in circles here?
I haven't
Pew
figured
Research
it
is
out.
usually pretty good.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of went to them first.
Yeah, they're not.
So we're trying to
Alright.
figure out how many.
So this is all gun-related deaths here. 54% are suicide.
No, that's not. That's all murders.
No, this one here is all. What share of U.S. gun deaths are murders and what are share
Oh, okay.
suicide? this is what share of all murders and suicides.
So it looks like it went
involve
down in
gun.
2020 because it used to be 66% were suicide. Now they're saying 54.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
And then how has it changed over time?
So
So
let's
there
see, how
were
has it changed?
45,220 total gun deaths in 2020. Which
Well,
is
2020 is a bad year to look at.
Yeah, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances there.
Really? In 2020? It was
No,
different
maybe
than
not.
other years
No,
somehow?
maybe not.
What was different?
Kind of I stayed at home a lot.
Yeah. So how did it? So is there anything on here usual, or I'd rather look at like 2018 or 2019.
U.S. gun suicide and gun murder rates have increased in recent years, but remain below past highs. So this is 1968 here. This is 2020.
So in 2020, we had about 18,000
So like the
murders.
90s were kind of
Well, that's
Murder, death, kills.
That's the thing that a lot of people don't talk about either. Is we've been on a downward trajectory for about 20 years,
right here.
up until according to that, up until about 2000 and up until the recession, really. Once the recession kicked in, which economic prosperity definitely leads to less need for guns.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
But I think that's, I mean, look at that. 70 suicides peaked in 77?
yeah, that's crazy.
Around 77.
Murders.
Murder rate here is the highest in 73.
The 90s sucked for murder rates too.
Yeah.
I mean, suicides. There's not much you can. I mean, look, suicides happen in all cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, different cultures have different fascinations with suicide. The Japanese love ropes. They love hanging. I don't know what it is.
Or stabbing
Or
themselves
stabbing
with swords.
themselves. Which I don't know how common that is.
I don't think it's that
But
common.
a normal person in Japan, they hang themselves.
Mm-hmm. There's that one whole forest where everybody goes to kill themselves.
Yeah, knives is actually China. They stab themselves.
China.
They get stabby in China.
Yeah.
So it's like different cultures have different ways, but they still have very high, like very comparable suicide rates. They just don't use guns.
Yeah.
It's a cultural thing and what they use to kill themselves. I think England's big on pills.
Yeah, but see, and that's always my concern with the gun thing is people will say, well, you make suicide easier because there's a gun. But I've always seen as someone who's convinced themselves to kill themselves, they're going to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in a state of mind
It
where they
makes
don't want to
suicide
live.
easier. Are you kidding me?
That's
kind
what
of moron makes that statement.
I don't know. That doesn't. Yeah. That's. I don't think that's true either. Because if you look at comparative suicide rates between cultures, we're not really that much different than other westernized countries. Yeah. It's
gun control and suicide shouldn't even be in the same sentence.
No, they're not really related. If you're going to kill yourself, owning a gun isn't going to change that. It's not like, I wasn't going to kill myself, but I have this gun.
Yeah, dang.
Like,
You
now
know,
I guess I will.
if I just had a gun, I'd end it.
Man, look at Wyoming. Get out of here.
Well, I mean, I feel like there's some skewing there because of population. I mean, I guess they're doing it per 100,000.
Yeah. It's age adjusted by state. Look at that.
Louisiana, Mississippi, Wyoming.
What was the point? We talked the other week, and you had brought up a statistic, and I was curious. I think it was
Which statistic?
well, it was like of like these kind of these mass shootings. Like how many of these mass shootings are really like occurring? Because I mean, they get headline news for half a year.
So you got to understand they're not that common. But what's really disturbing is how we count shootings at schools. So there are if a person sits in the parking lot of a school and commits suicide in their car, that's a school shooting.
A school shooting.
If a person across the street from a school has an accidental discharge of a firearm and it hits the brick wall of the school, that's a school shooting.
Yeah, that's just...
anytime anything is in any way, shape, or form related to a school, they count it, which seems ridiculous to me.
That's just trying to intentionally skew. Again, that's criminal activity.
It's definitely, like, I don't know if it's criminal, but it's definitely
why wouldn't it be?
Manipulative.
It's criminal.
It's
because it's a flat out lie.
And what they would say is, well, you can count it however you want to count it, but we don't have the national narrative, so that's the problem. What has it got here?
I'm just trying to look at how it's classified. Like,
so I was talking about school shootings. You're looking at mass
this is just
shootings.
mass shootings in general, how they're defined.
Okay, so mass shootings are tough because most mass shootings are gang related.
Right, and but the media will say there have been, I don't know, 200 mass shootings in the last 6 months, but they're when you say mass shooting, to me it's carnage, right?
Yes,
it's not like
the Buffalo grocery store. That's a mass shooting.
There was a shooting in Lancaster at the mall a couple months ago.
remember
a
that.
guy pulled a gun to shoot another guy, and he ended up wounding 2 other people while a good guy with a gun shot him. But that was classified as a mass shooting because there was 3 or more injuries.
Yes. And nobody died.
But that didn't fall under the heroic shooting category. We don't have
That guy,
We don't
the
have
guy who
a
stopped
category for heroic.
See, and you won't ever see that stuff in the media. I mean,
You
just
do in the new media.
not there are certain strains of media, but
Not in the corporate media.
it doesn't get the same kind of coverage that you would see. Like there, just after, I think it was after the Uvalde one, there was a woman in West Virginia who took out a guy who brought an AR-15 to a party.
Yep.
To shoot people up. He didn't get a shot off.
Yeah.
He just
There was
shot them
a
down.
woman in Philly.
That's not newsworthy.
There was a woman in Philly who had a pistol in her handbag, and a disgruntled dad who lost his kid in a custody battle came to a bus stop and pulled a gun out to take his kid from his mom, and she shot him 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
She put him down, kicked the gun away, and stood over him till the police got there. I think he lived, but yeah, you're not gonna hear
That's not newsworthy either.
No, there's a newsletter I subscribe to that releases every single day. There's stories like that. Well, it's actually a stat is defensive gun use. I think it's something like 500 or 600 people per year get killed by lawful gun owners defending themselves. So it's actually about as many as police shoot. It's about the same amount.
This is a subreddit on Reddit that I follow, and there's pretty much a story every day of a person who used a firearm to protect their home or their
The
life.
newsletter I'm in releases a new story every single day.
Yeah.
So there's definitely one every day. And they're harrowing tales. Like you read the story, and most of them too, the lawful firearm owner tries to give them multiple chances to go away. Like
Yeah,
you read the stories, and they're like, they told them they had a gun, they got them out of the house and closed and locked the door, and they fought their way back in. You know, they did all the things they could do before they finally opened fire. Like it's not like, you know, Susie Homemaker comes running out of the basement with a 12 gauge, just blasting off rounds. Like nobody wants to do this.
Well, and I think that's one way the media always tries to portray a gun owner as this vigilante who just wants death and destruction. Like, come to my house, I'll put you down type stuff. Like, that's what everybody's wishing for. But nobody in the world wishes to do that.
Well, that's because when you hear people over talking at the bar, that's what they're saying.
I mean, sure.
You know what I
but-
mean? That's just that's
What bar are you
becomes
going
the-
to?
Whenever when you hear people talking and they open, that's how they are. Don't come to my house. I got guns. You know what I mean? So that's.
I don't know. I don't say that.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Well, there's plenty of people that say that.
Yeah, I'm sure there are, but they try to vilify gun owners, just everyday gun owners, as these people have these fantasies of murder and all that stuff. Like, come through my door and I'll put a hole in you type stuff, and that's not the case at all. It's just people who rural communities.
Well, there should be nothing wrong with saying that. I mean, either. That's like, to me, that's
Well,
not.
do you own any firearms?
No.
You do not. Yeah. Would you?
Yeah, I would.
Why would you?
Why would I own one?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I want to own one now because I feel like things are becoming restless. And now I feel like I need to have one because I feel like, you know,
So self-defense.
yeah,
Okay.
like more so like for my house.
Okay.
You know, do I want to carry in public? I don't know. I don't know that I'd want to carry in public because I just don't think, you know, if you have to draw in public, I don't think it's going to end well.
That's where training comes in.
Yeah, that's where training comes in. And personally, I think if people were carrying in public, you wouldn't have to draw as often. Somebody's far less often to pull baloney if there's people standing around with, you know, hip holsters.
Yeah, the other side of it is if you're in public and you're carrying, you're not, depending on where you're at in the situation. Let's say you're in a supermarket, right? And you know there's an active shooter. You're not going towards that shooter necessarily.
No.
It's a run, hide, fight thing, right?
Yes.
Run, try to get away. You try to hide, and you have that gun there for if that
you're
person
forced
shows
to
up.
fight.
If you're forced to fight. Now, in some situations, you might be too close where you're forced to fight right from the get-go. Like you're at the cash register or something.
Or you might have people that are too close.
Too close,
And
yeah.
you're drawn in because you can't not be involved.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't say current events don't have me spooked to the point where I'd think about it. you
Well,
know.
the problem is a lot of private places like a supermarket won't allow you to open carry. So even though a state is open carry like Pennsylvania, that doesn't mean Walmart is open carry. They still get to control their own environment. That's a private property. So they can say, yes, Pennsylvania's open carry, but Walmart is not. Please leave your firearm in your car. So that's where you can conceal carry if you go into a supermarket. But that's where conceal carry becomes important. If you want to be armed in a place that doesn't allow you to be armed, you have to conceal.
Yeah, and a big important note for Pennsylvania is signs posted at doors do not carry the force of law.
No, they do not.
So, like Park City technically has no gun policy, but you can walk in there and you can't get arrested for it. You can be asked to leave, and you must leave at that point.
And if you refuse to leave, now
trespassing.
Now you're trespassing, and now you're breaking the law.
Yeah.
But if nobody asks you to leave, like Sheets, I believe, has a no firearms policy.
That I don't know.
I don't remember if they.
I don't know.
But I walked in. I was carrying because I went to the range, and I had my holster on, and I forgot. You ever forget? It happened to me. And I walked into Sheets to go get a sandwich, and I didn't realize till I got back in the car that I had my Glock on me the whole time. Nobody said anything.
Was it like in the open?
Yeah, I open carry. I don't conceal. I do sometimes, but not usually. Usually, I'm either carrying or I'm not.
I have no problem with people having guns. You know, I get worried. Like, I think about it at school events, and I'm always scanning.
But you're more
And
likely not to.
At that point in time, I'm hoping people have guns.
Yes,
But you probably won't find law-abiding firearm owners having a gun at a school event because it's a school event. It's illegal to
it's
carry
a
at a school.
gun-free zone, and you can get in major trouble if you get caught with a firearm in a gun-free
Like
zone.
felony, and you're never getting a gun again.
Yes.
At prison time.
So, I mean, I never carry on school property.
Nope. You
I
shouldn't.
never have it in my car on school property.
Nope. Anywhere that's government buildings and stuff. I was trying to pull up there's an app that I like called Legal Heat. It's on my phone, but that has all 50 states like regulations and stuff.
Yeah. It's a shame too, because I agree with you. Like I would feel much safer at a school event if I knew lawful citizens were armed. That way, if something were to happen, I knew there was recourse. We wouldn't have to wait 10 minutes for police to show up.
Mm-hmm. And if people knew that there were if people didn't know that there were not guns at school, then they
That's where
wouldn't be
you're
doing
gonna
what
go.
they're
Soft
doing.
target.
That's a soft target. Well, and that's really what the argument is about arming teachers and hardening. Look, after 9/11, we started the TSA. We hardened our airports. We hardened our government buildings. I know. Well, that's TSA is a different conversation. But we at least tried. We give it the old college try. And we tried to reduce the ease with which those resources could be used against us. And now we have a similar threat. We have a problem. Now, it's not, I don't know how they compare, but we have a threat that concerns us as a nation, and we all agree. So we need to harden those targets. I know you opened with saying we turn them into prisons. I don't think that's what this is. I mean, I don't agree with that. And I definitely don't agree with that if they're armed teachers. I think if you've got educators that are committed to children, that are trained, like somebody like myself, who is a responsible gun owner, who is trained in firearms, and who is also a teacher, I think you've got a win-win right there, where you can kind of added layers of protection in the school where you're not waiting for the police to get there. You're not waiting for them to set up a perimeter and for them to decide what they're going to do. You're not waiting to see if they follow their training and an hour goes by and kids are getting shot. You've got people in the building with personal relationships that are already ready to respond.
Yeah, 'cause
I don't see how that's a problem.
my first thought, in the situation out of Texas is, man, if this teachers could have had weapons, you know what I mean? If there could have been guns somewhere, like it couldn't have been, maybe minimized. Like, but it's, other people are like, oh, there should be no guns anywhere. I just don't, I just think different. I think the opposite way. Which I know that most, half the people do. I believe more than half the people do, because if less than half the people wouldn't think that way, they wouldn't have to push it so hard in the media. So I think these issues get pushed so hard in the media because they don't necessarily have the support that they want, and then that they just make it out to be a,
Banning stuff never works. It never works. Didn't work with alcohol.
Oh no, I think the drug war is going pretty well.
Drug war went great. I'm glad we won that one. Banning stuff never, ever works. And we keep going back to this well. And really, you think banning something like guns is going to go better than the war on drugs? I mean, there's no way that goes well. You're going to end up with an entire illegal arsenal of guns in this country.
The only people you're going to affect are the ones who follow laws.
That's it. Absolutely.
98%, 99% of gun owners.
And then I'm sure, let's say you're
higher than that.
Well, I mean, there might be a couple that don't follow laws, but
Oh.
yeah, I mean, they're going to turn in their guns or.
My experience is most gun owners are very responsible.
Well, that's the thing. You have to be responsible.
I don't think I've ever known a gun owner not to be responsible.
unless
agree
they're a
100%,
legal
yeah.
gun owner, right?
I don't know any illegal gun owners.
Which
'Cause I only know
which I was
legal
just
ones.
gonna say, like, depending on what neighborhood you're from, like, you can sit here and have this conversation and say that I think my neighborhood is safe because of the fact that probably every other house has a gun in it. Probably at least every third house has a gun in it in
And
my
they're not all
neighborhood.
shooting each other?
I know that. I'm pretty sure that that's a pretty good statistic for where I'm at.
So I'm assuming your neighborhood is
But-
nothing but sandbags and turret enclosures and all of your neighbors firing pot shots at each other over walls.
Yeah, I mean,
That's how it happens, right?
I think that happens when I'm asleep.
Oh, okay.
I don't hear it because I plug my ears.
I don't understand what these people think is happening. With
Well,
this.
maybe in an inner city neighborhood, it's not, every house has a gun and there's shootings all the time. So
But
I
I
guess
still would say it's not the legal gun owners.
exactly.
Right? They're
Yeah,
doing
that's
the
what I was
shooting.
just gonna say. So
Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're stuck in a circle of conversation in this country, and I don't know what the solution is. I would like to see some sort of non-registered training. I would like to see that because I will say that I think for young gun owners going through, we require to get a driver's license. I would like to see that. I think that would help. I would like it to not be state run. The one I recommend is the NRA training. For some reason, people hate the NRA. I don't really understand it.
I hate the NRA.
People hate the NRA, but they do a great job.
They're the biggest force for gun safety. Yeah, it's kind of changing, but
They really are, though.
right now, yeah, they have the most certified instructors and stuff.
Yeah, and they do a phenomenal job. I've taken 2 of their courses, and they're
good classes.
Yeah, they do not mess around. They're serious about what they do. I don't. Instead of vilifying the people that are trying to make guns safe, work with them. I don't understand that this division, this hate, is disturbing.
well, I heard that when I was out before the show, I was listening to it was a news, it was a news, I think it was out of like Australia. It might have been Europe somewhere, but they were talking to somebody out of the States and they were saying about, we need harsher gun laws, and that it might have been in Britain that they passed some gun laws that they couldn't have.
Britain doesn't have any guns.
Okay,
They
so
took away all gun rights.
so they said, well, ever since they took away gun laws, we haven't had any shootings in schools, and I don't know, what
No,
the
they have
facts
a
are.
very serious knife
Ton
problem.
of stabbings.
Knife
in
problem.
Britain.
Okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
what their stabbing stats are, but I know they're off the charts.
Okay, so yeah, so that's just ridiculous then for the news anchors to even have the conversation then.
Well, no, you're
But-
just shifting, and there's been mass stabbing events. Matt, the biggest one I think I've ever heard of is China. Wasn't there something like 119 people
Yeah, there was a dude who was running down the street or something like that.
just
Right?
stabbing her?
Just
Yeah, you
stabbing
can't.
her,
Yeah,
stabbing everybody.
so you can't sit there on the news as a news anchor and say, "Oh, they took our guns away. We don't have any more shootings." When your stabbing rates are going through the roof.
Well, that's
Like,
what
it's just ridiculous.
Gun rates
you know?
did go
It's-
down, stabbing rates came
yeah.
up.
So
all part of an agenda, but it's called nobody wants to address the reality of it. It's the person, it's the intent of the person. The only common thread throughout history has been man. Man has always killed man, right? We've always fought wars. We've always murdered each other, but it's just been different tools. But nobody wants to address that. It's the tool that's doing it. So we take away all the tools. Somebody will still kill somebody because we have hands. So then what?
We'll
We cut
headbutt
off our
them.
hands.
and shove our thumbs in their eyes and headbutt them to death.
Exactly.
Well, that happened before too. Yeah. If you keep sidestepping the real issue, which
Stab
is,
them or smash their skull with a rock, and
it's like one of my
push them off a cliff.
Simpsons did that. It was something about, if you look it up, Simpsons, aliens, nails with stick.
Well, hey, on this news show, they were talking about whether or not
Maybe don't play it, but
maybe the age
but
of
it's a board with a nail in it, so large. It's just talking about, it's like the nuclear war. It was like, ha ha ha, we've given the humans a board with a nail in it. Well, how will that hurt them? Not today, but soon there'll be a board with 2 nails. And then an even bigger board with more nails, and eventually a board so big with so many nails they'll destroy them all. And it's exactly what we're talking about. I don't know why that stuck out in my mind. But
So anyway, so the news reporters who were talking to the guy, and they said, "Well, what about changing the age of ownership from 18 to 21?" And the guy sort of kept sidestepping it, and I noticed he was sidestepping it, even though I didn't really know how I felt about it, so I'm interested to know. your guys' opinion on
Well, this is
going
where
from
I
18
dovetail.
to 21.
I don't like extending the age of adolescence, period. I don't even think alcohol should be 21. I think anytime you extend the age of adolescence, you just lengthen the period of immaturity. So we want to encourage young people to become functioning adults as soon as possible, which means once they're ready, we need to give them responsibility. I would say, and this is going to be a half measure, so don't beat me up, but I would say my training concept is at 21, you can buy a gun without training. At 18, as long as you take a training course, you can buy a gun. And that's where you keep it at 18, but if you want to buy it at that age, you have to go through the NRA training course and you have to show.
What do you do with kids who grew up around guns and are more efficient with a gun than what an NRA training class would do?
If they grew up around guns, they probably already took the training class.
And,
Well, that's why.
And you can
and
take
does
one before
and
18.
does the kid necessarily have to own a gun at 18? Like, what is the fetish with at 18? I want to.
Well, I hate.
So you-
I
I mean,
hate,
do they
I hate
really-
that
I mean-
approach to the conversation. It's not a fetish. It's
like-
definitely not.
Well, does it really matter? Like kids that are 18 years old are still using their parents' gun or whatever. I guess if their parents don't
At
have
18,
guns.
you're out of the house. You're out of high school. You're going to get an apartment. I mean, you're joining the military. You're coming back on leave. You want to go to the range. You're an adult as far as this society is concerned. You want to go hunting. Like you're not living with your parents anymore. I mean, maybe in your house they are, and maybe my older brother was there until he was 30.
And I don't have guns,
But-
so my kid wouldn't necessarily have a gun. But
Right.
I could go to the store and I could buy a gun. My kid could use that gun. I would feel comfortable owning a gun, and I don't know how. Like I don't know those specific roles. Like my nephew hunts and stuff, so he uses his dad's guns. So
How old's your nephew?
my nephew's young. He's 8th grade. I mean, he's been hunting for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, my nephew's about to start
he's been
hunting with
hunting.
his grandfather.
I know plenty of kids that have been hunting since they're,
Yeah, so my
Very-
nephew's about to
very
start
young.
hunting. He's 13. Now he's going to use his father's rifle, but as soon as he gets through all the training courses and everything, his dad's going to buy him his own rifle. Now it won't be registered to him. It'll be
Right.
registered to his dad, but it'll be his rifle for him to use.
Right.
So then they'll have to transfer the rifle over to him when he turns 18 and he can legally own it. But that's happening all over the place now. Like kids that grow up with guns own a gun. They just don't have it registered in their name.
My son owns a gun.
Yep, my daughter
He's
does
9.
too. My daughter's 9. She owns a gun too. That's not in her name. It's in my name.
It's in my name, but it's his gun.
What did you get him?
20 gauge.
Nice.
Yeah.
and so the thing they said, well, the guy said, well, at 18 they can join the military, they can go off and they could go die and fight in war. So why couldn't they own a gun? And then their argument was, well, they're being trained under,
Training.
they're
Nailed it.
being-
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so to get them through some training.
so.
Look, what I really want
It seems like a good compromise, and I didn't say it because I feel one way or the other. I just was curious what you guys would.
just blindly extending the age, and then what if somebody who's 21 goes out and buys a gun and shoots a place up? Then we make it 24. Then what? 27. Then what? 31. We're still not dealing.
And then it's
we're
like,
still not dealing with the core.
I mean,
issue.
there was
so
already
as soon as they're old enough to drink, we're gonna let them buy guns.
Exactly. Here's a beer and a handgun. Have a great time. It doesn't make any sense. But you're not dealing with the issue.
Yeah,
I mean, licensed firearm dealers cannot sell a gun to anyone under 21 anyways. Rifle. A handgun, I'm sorry.
Handgun.
A handgun cannot be purchased under 21. That was
So rifles.
appealed.
So and this guy bought obviously rifles. To
he bought
shoot up the
he bought
school.
rifles, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
We didn't even talk about the fact that Canada banned guns.
They
Yeah.
banned all gun purchases, but look at Canada now.
Yeah, Canada's a mess. Like I don't know what Canadians think about Justin Trudeau, but I know their truckers don't like him.
So, Canada's a big rural place.
I think with the exception of Toronto, Vancouver, and maybe Edmonton, I don't think he's very popular. But you gotta understand, Canada is small, and almost all of their population lives within 50 miles of the United States. It is not. What do they have? 30 million people.
I think so.
Yeah, we have states bigger than Canada.
Large but
population-wise.
small, right?
It's huge land-wise, but population-wise, it's basically a big U.S. state. So you've got a very different 38. Okay, I was a little low. So you've got a very different thing going on. And it's also much more homogenous than the United States. They're not nearly as diverse of a population set. So yeah, I think California is bigger than Canada, I believe. Texas is bigger than Canada in population, I believe. Is that what you're looking up?
I was just trying to see.
We'll just look up U.S. states by population. Any of them over 38, they win. Boom. Google knows what you want. Oh, no. California's the only one. So
Still.
basically, it's got a population of a little bit less than California. So Texas is creeping up on it. Look at Florida getting big there. Look at the drop off from New York to PA, though.
Yeah.
Like you go 39 million, 29 million, 21 million, 19 million, 12. It
just plummets.
It just plummets. So I don't know.
So what were we hoping to accomplish today?
Nothing, and we accomplished all of it.
We did really well.
I think the best part of the conversation happened in the last 10 minutes of the podcast. So if anybody hung through that opening debacle, congratulations. We got to call this. We're way over time. So I love you, buddy. Love you, brother. Everybody, have a great day, week, month, whatever it is there where you live.
The Broken Agenda Podcast. Sponsored by Laughing Rock Technology.